A vision is just a fantasy, right? Unless you can actually execute it. And so the wars are won on the ground. You have to be able to execute. And I've met some great leaders who could put together brilliant plans, but here's the deal.
That's John Barry, U.S. Army veteran, CEO of Barry Law, and the author of Veteran Led.
No plan survives first contact. And it's like, you can't just have one plan. No, as a leader, you got to win the battle on the ground and you have to be able to execute. And guess what? It doesn't always go as planned.
I'm Michael Mogul, founder and CEO of Crisp, the nation's #1 law firm growth company. I've built my business through practice, not theory. Crisp started with just $500 to my name and has grown to over 8 figures in revenue over the last few years, earning a spot on the Inc. 500 list of the fastest growing private companies in America. Our approach has been to take everything we've learned about generating massive growth within our own organization and help the country's most ambitious and committed law firm owners do the same for theirs. In each episode of this podcast, I sit down with innovative market leaders from the legal industry and beyond to learn from those who thrive in the face of adversity, challenge the status quo, and define what it means to be a true game changer. I sat down with John Barry to discuss what his time in the military taught him about scaling his law firm, the difference between feedback and failure and how to grow from both, and how to hire with high standards and build a culture of extreme ownership.
How do you respond when your world falls apart? Look, it's real easy when you're in charge and you make the mistake to say, hey, this is on me. I got it. Guys, I made a bad decision. Point the thumb, not the finger.
That's coming up on the Game Changing Attorney podcast. Before we begin today's episode, I want to remind you that we aren't beholden to any sponsors or run any ads on this podcast. This allows us to present all of our episodes raw and unfiltered. I'm not going to push any made-to-order meal services on you or try to save you any money on your car insurance. That being said, I have one small request. If you receive any value from this podcast, please give it a 5-star review. Pay the fee so we can keep this podcast free. All right, John, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me again, Michael. It's an honor.
I mean, you came back. I remember when we did the first podcast, we'll obviously link to that in the show notes, but then you came back and you wrote what I believe is probably one of the best leadership books that I've ever read. Fantastic. Let's just kick off with that. I'd love to know what inspired you to write, your book, Veteran Led. It's not like your typical lawyer book about here's why you should hire us. It's almost like a leadership manual. But if you could speak to that.
Sure. I mean, I think a lot of it, I saw you do it, right, at Crisp, and I saw the podcast, I saw the book, and I thought, yeah, this is something I want to do. But it took me a couple years to figure out what the book was going to be about and what the podcast was going to be about. And to be fair, the podcast was kind of a mistake. We were writing the book, having some issues getting it published, getting it done. And I thought, well, I've got like 20 chapters. Let's just start a podcast. And so we started the podcast, and I think we had about 100 episodes done before the book even came out. But yeah, every business does or should have an operations manual. How do you run your business? Policies and procedures. You should have all of that. But I didn't meet any business owners who had leadership manuals. And as we kept making the same leadership mistakes over and over again, and then I saw subordinates make those mistakes, I was like, whoa, these mistakes are getting expensive. These lessons are too expensive. So I started documenting everything and then bringing back some of my stories from the military where I learned the lessons the first time. And that was what was so painful about all of it is a lot of the mistakes I made in business, I made them in the military as a leader. And then it's like, look, okay, the operating environment has changed, but the leadership principles really haven't. And so I wrote this book, to let veterans know you have the capabilities to go out and lead your company, lead the community, whatever you want to do, you have the basic skill set. Do not be intimidated because you took the uniform off and you're in the new civilian world. There's no need for that. You have the basic skills, use them. Your country needs them. Please go out and use them. You already have them. And then the second thing was for us, Barry Law, internally. When we hire people, we send them a copy of the book. We expect them to read the book. I go back to it sometimes and I'm like, yeah, I just made this mistake again, even though I wrote the damn thing in the book. So yeah, it's a leadership manual. It's my experiences and what I think works, and at least most of it. Some stuff has changed.
And for those that may not have listened to your first episode, and obviously I strongly encourage that, but just could you give some of the people listening a bit of background on you, just from leading combat missions in Iraq to leading one of the most successful firms in the country?
Sure. So, I mean, the firm was started by my father, a Vietnam veteran, phenomenal lawyer, not great at running a law firm. And then I was an infantry officer in the Army, went through airborne school, Ranger school, was a platoon leader in Bosnia. In 1999, we started bombing Kosovo. We thought something was going to blow up. It never did. I went through law school. I stayed in the National Guard. They paid for some of my law school. And I was deployed to Iraq, but not as an infantry company commander, but as a logistics company commander. So I didn't get to see all that, that combat action that I thought that I would have seen as an infantry officer. That's how life works sometimes. So I helped with logistics, which, we got out of the wire, but not as often as we wanted to. But the leadership was the same. I mean, it was the exact same stuff. That's the interesting thing about the military is you can transfer to a different branch and still be successful because it's about the leadership skills. It's not about the specific thing that you're doing. It's about understanding how to lead within that organization. And there are some advantages that the military has where they're already bought into the culture by the time you show up, as opposed to building a company where you have to figure out what the culture is going to be. So from my history, it was taking over my father's firm and struggling to really build it into the firm that it is today. New level, new devil, I've heard you say it. And a lot of struggles along the way, but went from taking those military lessons to really streamlining how we run legal operations.
Speaking of culture, how would you describe the culture of Berry Law today?
I am extremely proud of our culture. I love our team. Our leadership team is so aligned, and it hasn't always been that way. I was pretty naive. I thought, okay, if I start this with a military culture, hire senior military people, this is all going to work out. It's going to be awesome. And it was until it wasn't. And then we figured out that just because someone was a senior military leader didn't mean that they knew enough about the practice of law or the business of law or had any general business skills. And so you had these leadership skills that were not really tied to any specific deliverable or outcome. And so you bring them in to start leading and you realize, leadership without experience is not that valuable. It's just like being a second lieutenant. And so we made a lot of mistakes along the way, but our leadership team is really tight right now. We've made some tough decisions. As you've said in the past, some of your biggest decisions were some of the least popular decisions. I felt the same way until now, right? And now it's like, I would agree up to about 20, 30 million. Yeah, I had to make the unpopular decisions. But then you get these great leaders on the team and it's like, they're the ones that are saying, why don't we just think about your decision for a little bit and sit on it? And then they dissect it and tear it apart. And I'm like, yeah, that's a pretty bad decision. You ever been there, Michael?
Oh, yeah. I still go through it. And I was thinking back to, John, when you and I first met, it was probably back at one of those Avon Ergonomics conferences. Like I was a baby. Your firm was already doing well, but I'd love for you to just share like what have been perhaps some of those unpopular decisions that have broken through various plateaus, as to the firm, let's say, growing over 1 million, 10 million, 20 plus million. Like what have you attributed the decisions you made to breaking through those plateaus?
Yeah, I think the most important decisions, I would go back to a few of them. Number one is hiring our general counsel, a senior person who could handle all the problems. That was like the first domino, because after we hired him, right, he was well known in the community, well respected. We were able to get a lot of great talent because they're like, whoa, he'll take care of my problems. I'll come over to this for, because every lawyer, when they want to practice law, they don't have to deal with the problems. That was number one, right? Number two, I think I met you at AVO, right?
Yep.
And that was like, I signed up for everything. Like if you were a vendor at AVO in 2016 and Berry Law didn't sign up, you suck. Fire your salespeople, right? Too late. You probably already fired them. You're probably already out of business. But I was just like, okay, I'm just going to, whatever it is, I'm doing everything. And, I think by that point, we were like $3.1 million in 2015. So we're in 2016, like we're not a big company. This is back when Crisp only did videos. Yep. And I loved your presentation, what you did. I saw the value of the branding. So I started working with you there and started building out some of the videos. And that's where I realized like, branding is really important. Like this is the differentiator. We started working together and the work you did was phenomenal. And then come 2 years later, we're getting ready to do some more videos. And I had this verdict. The verdict came while your team was on the ground. We created this amazing testimonial video, right? And so that's where I really got to see like, wow, like we could really do something with the brand. And with the brand, we can attract better talent, hire better people, but also not just lawyers, but also, in the IT, finance, marketing, sales. And so we saw this great opportunity to build a brand that would want people would want to come be a part of. And so as we grew, the culture changed. And Travis Mack, he's the CEO of Salex. He said, at 8 figures, your culture is going to be a little bit different than it will be at 9 figures. And you just got to accept it. If you love your culture so much and you don't want to change it, you're not going to grow. So just get ready for it. So, those were, I think, the 2 big steps. Like I said, hiring that senior person to come in and clean up all the problems, run the day-to-day so that I could grow the organization, and then starting to really invest in the brand, which, like I said, started with Crisp, started with the videos. I mean, fortunately for me, and I get it. Video is not for everybody. Some people are too shy. They have feelings against it. It's just, they don't like how they look on camera. So it's not for everybody. But if you're going to grow your organization, people are on social media, you have to be seen. You have to be heard. And if you're not willing to invest in that, in being seen, being heard, then who the hell would follow you? Why would I follow someone who doesn't have the guts to get on camera and say how they feel?
I love it. I want to dig in to the book a little bit. I love the stories that you share. I mean, the whole thing is just what a journey all the way through. You tell a story about your father in Vietnam during a downpour. I think a sergeant tells him, "You're the wettest you're going to get." How is that? When you tell that story, even that moment, influenced how you lead under pressure?
Yeah, I mean, at some point, it's like you've heard the acronym WIFIO, right? We're fucked, it's over, right? That's it. Okay, it's over. But failing isn't failure. You're going to fail, you're going to fail. And so the story is, my dad would travel throughout Vietnam. He had permissive TDY orders. He'd go anywhere. He had a gunner, a driver, a Jeep. And, one day they're out and the monsoon hits and they're out in this primitive road. And so the road washes out. They're just stuck in mud. And the rain is just pouring. And they're not going to get to their hearing. They got to, the closest place they can get to is back to headquarters. And my dad was a former infantry guy, but he became a JAG lawyer for a reason. He didn't want to have to hump it through the rain and so they're like, hey, we're going to have to get off this road and walk back through the jungle. No one's coming for you, right? No one's coming to get you. You can just sit it out in the rain and wait to when the monsoon stops, or you can head back. So they headed back and he was complaining. And one of his sergeants, I believe it was the driver, just said, "Hey, sir, just stop your bitching. You're as wet as you are going to get." And, I think it wasn't Bob Marley, but somebody said, some people feel the rain, some just get wet. And I think, when it's pouring, it's going to pour. And I've been through something like that, recently, where it's all the bad things happen at once. And you're the leader. What are you going to do? Are you going to, say, "Hey guys, I'm having a bad day"? Maybe you should. I mean, sometimes I found that, hey, I need to take a little time off. I need to back off, because if I'm front facing and I'm bringing some negative energy, I'm pretty intense, but I try to keep it positive. But if I'm bringing negative energy into the organization, then I'm getting wet, right? I'm getting wet and I'm getting everybody wet around me. And that's not good for the organization. And that can, undermine the organization's confidence in the leader. So sometimes you got to step back and say, hey, I'm as hard as they come, right? I'm like, I got to back off and say, wait a minute. This is affecting me. This is affecting my decision-making. And leaders make decisions. And if I'm coming in here and something in my personal life is affecting my ability to make a decision, then I need to back off, let my leaders step up, put them in charge, and let them lead. And sometimes that's the best thing you can do for the organization. In the perfect world, no, it's planned. You hear all this stuff. No, you plan to go on a vacation, let your second in command lead. You'll be on the beach. It'll be cool. You'll be relaxed. They'll be running the company and you can check in, and that'll give them a chance to lead. But see, that's not how it happens in real life, because in real life, you're too addicted to the game, right? You want to keep winning. You're not going to step away. I know you were able to do a sabbatical. I know you were able to. I don't have that discipline. It was like, no, wait a minute. I had the self-awareness to say, whoa, I'm not coming from a good place here. And I had some, junior leaders say, hey, we got this. You need to deal with this issue. And here's the thing. And I think, for most of us leaders, and I think any high performer would tell you that, it's really easy. Like I own my mistakes. When I screw something up, I have no problem taking accountability for it. What I cannot stand is when there is something that I didn't play a part in. I can't take the blame for it. I mean, I try to, right? I try to find a reason why it's my fault. And then I'll have people tell me, John, there's nothing you could have done. That was not your fault, right? But I still have to deal with the consequences. Oh, I hate that, right? Because if the look, I have no shortage of self-inflicted wounds here. I do stupid stuff all the time, and I can live with that because I learn from it and I accept it. But it gets tough when something happens, and as much as you try to say, oh, it's on me, everybody around you is going, John, it's not on you. This has nothing to do with you. This has to do with somebody else and a decision somebody else made, and this has affected whatever. And so you have to deal with that. And, internally, but I'm so used to being in control. I'm not a victim. I don't believe in the word fair. And yet there are things that are out of our control that we have to accept, right? And so I found, at that time, and once again, there's no need to get into specifics, but when you find yourself in that time, I think it's really easy to assert your power and authority and to go in there and just start slitting throats, right? Have the red wedding but that doesn't show power. Sometimes real power is restraint and doing nothing. And what I found, what I've always heard is the rotten apple always falls off the tree. And what I found is that, sometimes when something bad happens, the best thing you can do is do nothing. That's the old thing like your parents would say, if you're a kid and everybody was making fun of you and they'd say, hey, the best thing you can do is to just be successful. Don't worry about getting even with them. Don't worry about saying something back to them. Don't worry about hurting them back. Just be successful. That will hurt them more than anything. And the truth is that wasn't true. They don't care whether you're successful or not. But in the end, it sure makes us feel good. But we need to feel good about ourselves, right? But I do appreciate the gesture. So I got to tell you that leaders all go through dark times. And one of my good friends, Channing Walker, I just had him on my show, former 7th Group Special Forces guy, great dude, has a couple companies now. And he, when I went through this, he's like, hey, we need to meet up. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, man, we need to meet up. And I'm like, why? He's like, well, everybody goes through stuff, but I just want to meet up with you. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, he kept calling, checking in, and he wouldn't say like, are you okay? Right? Everybody says, are you okay? He's like, hey, are you eating? Are you working? How much sleep you getting? You working out? And I had just had my neck surgery, had 3 discs replaced, and I still have some issues with my arm and stuff. And it's like, no, I'm not working out. He's like, dude, we got to get together. And that dude literally hunted me down and found me to hang out, and it was like, we're hanging out. And I think leaders show up. And I think that's really important. If you have somebody on your team that's struggling, show up for them. Show up at their house. I used to do that for my soldiers. I'd check up on them. I'd show up at their house. What's going on? Always show up. And then some people show up in different ways. I know I got from Michael and Jessica Mogill, the Giftology, the K-bar with my name inscribed on. I'm holding it up for the video. Great, thoughtful gift, not to incite violence, but to encourage peace. This was to cut vegetables.
For cutting vegetables, yeah.
For cutting vegetables, right? Relieving stress. But the point is, I think that's the thing is, as a leader, we have to show up for our team. And I think sometimes it shows you the level of your relationships with your peers, with your subordinates, even your bosses, when things happen, who shows up for you? Because that's a great metric. So I appreciate you and Jessica showing up. And I know that we've had heated moments, but I appreciate the kind gesture. And as I said, you definitely won Giftology there, right? Hey, send the right thing. I think the thing was sent overnight after we talked. And I'm like, whoa. So sometimes you're going to be as wet as you're going to get. And for me, the physical injury and had a difficult time coming back, personal thing that was beyond my control, which once again, if I screw something up, all day long, I'm good with it. But when it's not me, man, that's tough. So dealing with that, I realized like, hey, I'm not in the right headspace right now. We've got some important decisions to make. Let me pull back and let the team slingshot forward. And that's what happened. And so I took a little time and, I was as wet as I was going to get. And I realized, let's dry off, preferably in a warmer climate, and come back. And that really helped. And I got to tell you, you come back to the leadership team and everybody's pumped up. It's like, wow, it lifts you up. And I think comes back to you can't change the people in your life, but you can change who you hang out with. And so I was really proud of how the leadership team handled it. And so once again, maybe it proves all the philosophies and theories in the book, which was that I had the leaders who stepped up, who grew the organization in my absence. But I mean, these things happen. We all know bad things are going to happen, but they just never happen the way we think they're going to happen. So like, for instance, in your business this year, Michael, I mean, I'm sure by now at least one bad thing has happened. I can remember I was at the end.
What time is it, right? It's right.
Yeah, what time is it? I mean, I remember it was January.
Yeah.
I was like, January this year. I'm like, okay, We just started Q1 and I've already made a $100,000 mistake. Bam, within the first week. That's what this is going to cost me. Yep, that was dumb. And I mean, that's, the goal is to be able to make the $1 million mistakes, the $10 million mistakes, because that's how big we become. But as a leader, you're going to get wet and it's going to keep coming and people are going to look at you. How do you respond when your world falls apart? Look, it's real easy when you're in charge and you make the mistake to say, hey, this is on me. I got it, guys. I made a bad decision. Let's walk this back. This is a learning opportunity, but this is on me. Point the thumb, right? Not the finger. And then the book, when I was taking responsibility for everything, then the leaders always say, John's got it. John's got it. John's got it. Oh, the coffee's out. John's got it. No, you can't be that type of leader. You show up. You have to have impact when you show up. So you have to decide, how am I going to show up? And when I show up, what is the desired end state of that impact that I'm going to have on the individuals that I want to influence? And as leaders, we're constantly influencing the team around us, whether we want to or not. Our actions are magnified, our words are magnified, and you can say something and not even think anything of it, and that you may have ruined a team member's weekend, or you may have made their year. It's a couple words.
Yeah. So we both have already made a tremendous amount of mistakes. We're very united on that. I will say the other thing that we are in alignment on is that a lot of the good decisions we've made have come to the people that we've hired. And you built a phenomenal organization, excellent leaders, just world class. What do you look for when you're hiring somebody?
I already know who I want before I want them. So I look for someone who has drive, who is intelligent, and someone who wants more out of life. So they got to be like just naturally driven. It doesn't matter what they're doing. They should be driven. They should be competitors. You don't want someone who is on the downswing of their life. They need to be on the upswing. They got to be wanting more, right? And they have to be smart. I mean, I remember one time when I was company commander, we were getting ready to deploy to Bosnia. I was a platoon leader. We got these thermoses, because it was cold in Bosnia. And it says, keeps the hot stuff hot, keeps the cold stuff cold. And this soldier came up to me and said, sir, how does it know? I said, what are you talking about? He said, sir, the thermos. How does it know to keep the hot stuff hot and the cold stuff cold? If someone's asking you that question, maybe that's not the person who should be your chief financial officer, right? Or, your chief operating officer. I think that we all have ceilings, right? And I know that at Barry Law, that we will reach a certain number where I will no longer be competent to lead the organization. I know that. And so we'll get there, and I'll be happy when we get there, but I know that I'm going to be the one asking the dumb questions then. And then once again, people say there's no such thing as a dumb question, yet how do we judge people's intelligence? Based on the quality of question that they ask.
I know you also say that retention really starts at hiring and the onboard with intention. One of the things you talk about in the book is Operation Spear Tip. And I'd love if you could elaborate on that, just what you guys do when it comes to onboarding and how that's been so successful.
Yeah, so what we've done is we've decided that our best people come from our best people. So if I'm going to spend all this time and money to recruit A players, I know that they know 3, 4, 5 other A players. I want them too. And if you think about any team you've been on, right, if you could go wherever you want to go, Mike Mogill's going to start a new company. He's probably got 4 or 5 people in mind that he wants on that team. Well, it's the same thing when you hire an A player. They know 4 or 5 people that they would really love to have on their team. So we just financially incentivize them. So for us, a lawyer is $50,000. It's $10,000 every year for 5 years that you're there and the other team members there. For non-lawyers, it's $25,000. That's $5,000 a year for every year that both team members are there. So the great thing is if you recruit somebody and they leave you, you're out your bonus. And if they're your buddy, they're generally not going to leave. Now, we're not going to hire, your cousin Eddie, or we're not going to hire somebody just because you think they're good. We still have pretty strict hiring standards. They got to jump through some hoops. They got to be able to prove that they deserve the opportunity. But what I have found is, where we have, I would say, left talent on the table or talent on the sidelines, is that we have had some phenomenal team members who knew great people and weren't recruiting them. I'm like, why wouldn't you want them to be on our team? Are you embarrassed of us? Are you not proud of what we do here? Do you not like our mission? Do you not feel comfortable? What's the deal? And they're like, well, I wouldn't want someone to come here. Okay, well, what if we financially incentivize you to ask them to come? Oh, well then, yeah, I'd do that. I mean, it's amazing, but no, that's made a huge difference. And I would say also then that part of the culture, it's a referral culture, and that's bled over into our We get over 100 referrals a week, clients, right? So we say we want client referrals, we want employee referrals, and everything we do, we're trying to say, look, guys, you want to be on this team? The way you build the bigger, better future is we scale it, which means I need 5 of you. So think of 5 people who are like you, who are just as good as you, if not better, and let's bring them on the team. And that's going to create leadership opportunities, growth opportunities. The bigger we get, the more capabilities we have, the more efficient we get, the more we're able to pay our team, the better benefits we can provide. So it's like, why do you not want to help us grow this? If you're showing up here every day, why wouldn't you just go all in? And that is one thing I still don't understand it as an owner. I don't think I'll ever understand, like social media. Like, wouldn't you just be like, why isn't everybody from Crisp sharing all this Crisp stuff organically on all their social media pages, right? And people are like, well, it's personal to me. And I'm like, bullshit. Like at the end of the day, like it's not really personal. If you want to make something personal, send them a letter. It blows my mind. Some people are all in and they'll post everything on social. Some people post way too much and it's like political. I'm like, whoa, hey, this has not, you got to tone it down. But it's just things like that where you say, who is somebody who would just go all in? Because we're all in every day. And I know you went all in very early and it paid its reward. But here's the question. If Jessica and Michael aren't pushing, who's pushing for growth?
Yeah. So I've learned this lesson. I even learned it, probably about a year and a half ago. It's in order for you to not have to be the driver forever, right? Because there's something to be said about founder-led businesses. It's very different than when you bring in like an outside CEO or hired gun. You see that all the time. That being said, the rule that I live by now is that the only way that I'll be able to live a life where I'm not the one doing all the pushing is if I hire leaders with higher standards than me. So I look for them in different departments. I say, if this person has to have a higher standard than me, because if they don't, and it's the other way around, that I'm the one that has to be pushing that standard and reinforcing things. So when we look at every single department, we're bringing somebody in, it's always asking questions and getting an assessment of like, where do their standards lie? Like, are they like, let's say in something on client facing, are they just customer obsessed, right? Are they just obsessed over every detail? And how do we really vet that? So it just really comes down to standards. And if you could find, let's say, if I found a CEO with higher standards than me, I'd probably hire them.
Yeah, absolutely. They also got to be smarter though. I found that, sometimes I run into individuals that have very high standards, but they don't have the intelligence to back it. And then to the team, they just look like assholes, right? They're like, I have the standard, we're sticking to the standard, but they either lack the EQ or just the raw intelligence to be able to articulate why the standard is the standard. That becomes a disaster. But yeah, you need someone who just maintains high. And yeah, it's the person who is the most irritated is usually the best person to be in charge, because they're like, this isn't right, this isn't right, this isn't right. They're never going to let they can't stand letting the standards slip. The least tolerable people, right, they're just intolerant of anything except for excellence, those are the people who should be in charge. But they need to be smart enough so that it's not just like, okay, all this person is an asshole, because you'll lose some really good people that way. And I've learned that, where I'm like, this guy's a hard charger, first in, last out. But that person at some level became toxic because they just were pushing everybody past the breaking point and weren't really thinking about, well, why are we doing this? And so, you had people working really hard, working an extra few hours a day on tasks they didn't need to be doing, right? It's like, okay, you're a great hard charger, but we're missing something here. As a leader, you learn these lessons. I mean, I know sometimes we get embarrassed and we're like, oh man, I was so stupid. But this is how you get better. You make the mistake, right? It's like you get the scar, learn the lesson.
So actually, I want to follow up on this, because I was just thinking as you were saying this, I'm curious, with your background in the military and you were in Ranger School and just all of the adversity that you have experienced, how do you navigate that in the day-to-day of the business when somebody's struggling with something that you would look at and say, that's insignificant, right? They're upset the coffee creamer's out or something like that, and pushing people, but not pushing them past the point of their capability?
Sometimes it's just refocusing them, right? I mean, I go back to that, the story about, someone went to Bill Gates and Warren Buffett were at dinner and someone asked, what's been the secret to success? And both of them just said, focus. So my point is, the coffee creamer may be out, okay? Understand that, but how does that have anything to do with your objectives today, right? So I think for a lot of people, it's really setting them straight. This is your mission. These are your objectives. Here's your task condition standards. We want you to get everything done to standard. And, we know there's going to be bumps along the way, and, but we have to achieve these standards by this time. This is it. Standards, this is the deadline. And I think, the coffee creamer is a great example. If the person is losing their mind over the coffee creamer, granted, they may just be having a bad day, and I get that. But you got bigger problems. Here's the standard. Now maybe they met all the standards, and maybe as a leader, I haven't challenged them enough where they're blowing it out of the water every day. And their biggest problem is the coffee creamer. That I have as a leader, I've coddled them by giving them coffee creamer when I should be challenging them and pushing them harder. And so, sometimes it's a symptom of, I have nothing else to complain about. This is it because I got all my work done and whatever. But other times it's like, oh my God, I can't handle the lack of coddling. I need someone to fix this. And look, if they're complaining about the coffee creamer, man, that's the least of your worries. They're complaining to your IT team. They're pissing off your finance team. Marketing hates them. The sales team doesn't like them. If they're complaining about the coffee creamer, they're complaining about everything else. That's always a bad sign that something is wrong in the organization when someone is complaining about a little detail if other things are going wrong. Now, if everything's perfect and the coffee creamer is the only issue and someone's pointing it out, well, then you're a better leader than I'm ever going to be.
So let's actually, on this note, talk about operating with urgency. You may have heard this story. It was Elon Musk at one of the Tesla factories, and they had a Starbucks there, and he was there, and he sees a bunch of people waiting in line for coffee, and he loses his mind over it. And he's like, the fact that you guys are waiting in line tells me that you don't understand the urgency of our mission, right? Of what we have to accomplish. And he actually thought about firing all of them. Just the idea that they were waiting in line for coffee. Now, obviously people blew up about the story, like the media went nuts and they're like, how toxic, et cetera, neglecting the fact that you've got a Starbucks on site in your facility, which in itself seems like a nice benefit to have. But what's your thought in terms of operating with urgency? I know some people will view it as saying, well, we could either do it right or we could do it fast. And I used to subscribe to that. Today, I believe you can have both.
Yeah, you can do it right and fast. It just costs money. And I think I have this in the book. If not, it's a great example I learned. I was a young lieutenant, and this is my first time out in the field. And they taught us leaders eat last. The Simon Sinek bullshit line. He was never in the military, but he's talking about well, here's the deal. I figured I believe that shit. Till I was actually in the field with other infantry soldiers, and there I am, the platoon leader, and we just finished a mission, and we're in the chow line. They're bringing hot meal out. We've been eating MREs, so we're actually getting out, like, this is great. Oh, I'm going to let my soldiers eat first. The first sergeant comes up to me, he's like, sir, why are you in the back of my chow line? Hey, first sergeant, I'm going to let the soldiers eat first. He's like, who plans the logistics around here, lieutenant? I'm like, well, you do, first sergeant. He's like, I do. And you don't think I know how to count? I'm like, no, first sergeant. He's like, well, you're going to get an op order in about 5 minutes, so you're not going to have much time to eat. And look, I know you got a Ranger tab. You know what happens when soldiers don't eat. So why are you wasting your time waiting in the back of this line for your soldiers to eat first? And he says, Sergeant Kowaleski, he says, Ski, get over here. Take the lieutenant to the front of the line, fill up his plate, make him sit down and eat. Leaders don't eat last. Leaders make sure that there is enough food for everybody, but leaders don't waste time waiting in line for other people to eat. No, leaders make sure everybody does eat. Leaders put the fucking meat on the table. That is what leaders do. But leaders don't wait for everybody to get done. No, you want to know what they do? We put the meat on the table, and then we go out and we kill something else, and then we bring it back so that our team will continue to eat. And that's what the first sergeant was telling me. Barry, what are you doing? Get to the front line, get your chow, learn the next mission, and go. You do not have time to be wasting time waiting in line. So imagine Elon Musk in the back of the Starbucks line, right? So thank God he wasn't doing that. That's probably why he's the success that he is.
He was seeing his engineers waiting in that line.
Oh,
and it
yeah.
blew his mind.
Yeah. Hey, this guy's getting paid $500 an hour, and he's standing in line waiting for a cup of coffee. But no, that was just a great lesson, because our job as leaders is not to wait in line, not to eat last, but to take care of our bodies. Our job is to make sure there's enough food for everybody. And if we have to wait in line to figure out whether there's enough food, we are fucked up. We should have a correct head count. We should know exactly how much food we need. We should make sure all that food arrived on time, and that all of our soldiers are present and ready to eat. Losers eat last.
This is a perfect segue to, I've never been a fan of a lot of business advice coming from people that have themselves never been in the arena. And I'm all for like the researchers, and they do the studies, and I think there's some validity to it for sure. But in the book, you write that wars are won in deserts, not in boardrooms. What do you mean by that?
A plan, like a vision, is just a fantasy right? Unless you can actually execute it. And so the wars are won on the ground. You have to be able to execute. And I've met some great leaders who could put together brilliant plans, but here's the deal. You got to be clear and concise, get to the point. If your people know how to execute, you will win. Wars are won because we have, we have some great equipment, we have great technology, but there is nothing tougher than the American soldier, the American Marine. And I mean, you get them on the ground, they know how to execute. Our mission statements give the who, what, when, and why. We do not say how in military mission statements. Why? Because we let our leaders figure that out. But when we put them on the ground, we expect them to execute. So yeah, wars are not won in the planning room. No plan survives first contact. And I hate the saying, "Oh, burn the ships." Burn the ships. No, that's not how you do it. We had this thing in the Army. It was called PACE. You have your primary plan. You have your alternate plan, you have your contingency plan, and then you have your exit or escape plan. And it's like, you can't just have one plan. No, as a leader, you got to win the battle on the ground, and you have to be able to execute. And guess what? It doesn't always go as planned. And that's why your trial lawyers are usually great business leaders if they want to be, because they know that when you're in trial, things may not happen the way you want them to happen. The witness, you think you have them locked in, and all of a sudden something happens. The judge rules against you. Whatever happens, your opening statement falls flat. Some evidence you can't get in a trial, whatever it is, you got to be able to react and keep going and go forward. And so the planning is indispensable. You got to do the planning, and it's going to prepare you. But it's kind of like saying, it doesn't matter. Everybody's training for the Olympics. The question is, who's going to show up on that day and perform?
So I want to talk about something that you've shared from many, many years. I know you put it in the book as well, the concept of just feedback being a gift, and especially when it hurts. What's been a tough piece of feedback that you received that hurt, but ultimately really benefited you in terms of scaling the firm?
I get it every day. I had our L10 meeting, and my CIO, we were going over some stuff, and he's like, "Who's in charge here? Is this a CEO decision, or is this a chief of legal operations decision?" And of course, I didn't process that till after the meeting. I'm like, "Oh, I got this," and then after I'm like, oh, I see what he was saying. So yeah, no, I mean, that was he's like, "John, you appointed a leader to run this, and you just stepped on their toes. What are you doing?" But also getting feedback. Hey, this plan is not working. And with my CFO, sometimes getting the numbers. "John, I get what this plan was, and I understand where you were going with this. This is the reality in terms of cash flow. This is not going to work." So I think feedback is a gift, and the best feedback hurts, right? Like the feedback that, hey, when I had, went through, some personal stuff, once again, it's like, hey, I can't be the victim. I can't, whatever. And people, hey, John, you need to be more cognizant of the energy you're giving off here, right? It's like, oh my God. Wait a minute. What do you mean? I'm showing up every day. Nothing's stopping me. They're like, "Yeah, but people can see you're pretty pissed off." I'm always pissed off, right? And they're like, no, the energy is different here. And so taking that, and I was like, oh man, I think I'm in control, but I'm not. I got to back off. I'm not seeing the whole beach ball here. They're seeing me differently, and they're telling me I'm not coming. I'm not showing up the way I normally show up. I'm like, "What do you mean, man? I'm coming in, bringing all the energy. I'm coming." And they're like, no, you are, but it's a different energy. I couldn't see it. And that feedback always hurts, because it's like people are nervous. They're scared. They're relying on the leader to make all the decisions. And then they start to lose confidence in the leader, because the leader can't see. It's the emperor has no clothes. It's like people are saying, whatever. Most people tell me, "Hey, you're doing good," whatever. But it takes the guts of somebody to say, "You know what, man? Take a knee and drink water on this one. Let us take this one from you." That hurts. But then, after your ego recovers, it's like, man, I am a good leader, because I got a team that's going to step up for me. And when I'm weak, they're strong. And I've developed something special here.
Yeah, I agree. You also write that leaders must learn when to coach, when to confront, and when to cut someone loose. Can you elaborate on that, just for each one?
To coach, when you have those A players, coach them, invest your time, right? We love good returns. We love good returns on our investments. No better return on coaching. When to cut them loose, you always have to assume that if they're failing, you as a leader did not provide clear enough guidance. You didn't set the standards. Maybe you didn't lead by example. Maybe you confused them. So take a moment, give them clarity, let them ask questions, and give them another chance. Make sure it's not your fault before you terminate them. But If they can't make it after you have ensured that there's no miscommunication here, this is just someone who cannot meet the standard or chooses not to meet the standard, then, I mean, cut sling load immediately. Let them go. Boom. When to confront. Yeah. I think it's more about how to confront. I mean, always confront people. Always, always, always. If you have an issue, our leadership team, we have a written agreement, right, that we'll always confront. And then we will never take it personally, and we'll always let it go. If you see something, say something. So if something on the leadership team and we see that maybe, the marketing team is pissed off the PI section lead, whatever, for whatever reason, and it's just, you can kind of see maybe there's some passive aggressive, it just seems weird, say, hey, you guys have an issue. What's going on? And then we allow each person, 5 minutes to talk, respond, and then we as a team agree to resolve it. But you have to confront, because there's always going to be conflict, and you have to decide how you're going to handle that conflict. And I found the best way to handle conflict is to have a system for it. Look, if we think we're showing up at the leadership meeting and we have a problem, because number one team is leadership team. If the leadership team is fractured, we are screwed. So let's have a conversation. We think there's issues here, and we're going to bring it up. And usually it's the person, hey, I kind of have an issue with this. When I did EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, they call it clearing the air. Hey, let's clear. I want to clear the air, and then you have to say, Michael, I'm clear with you. So and so, I'm clear, and just get clear with people so that we're all good. But I'm not a huge fan of that. I'm more of let's just go in there. And if I see conflict between Michael and Jessica, I might say something. I might say, hey, guys, I just want to make sure we're good here because I'm seeing a little bit of conflict, and I want to make sure it's not affecting our decision-making because we're making some big decisions today. So I see confrontation as, embracing conflict and having a process to deal with it and getting everybody on board. And my hope with that conflict resolution process, it's going to spread through the organization, and everybody's going to sign a piece of paper saying, I understand these are the steps that we take. And it just makes it easier. And I will tell you, it doesn't always work. And the people it doesn't work with, fire them. They are toxic. Toxic people don't want to resolve the conflict. They want the confrontation, but they don't want resolution. And you can't change that. You can't change if they aren't willing to join on. Then guess what? It's going to be worse down the road. So just if they won't embrace the conflict, they're going to do it behind your back, and it's going to get worse.
So looking ahead, John, what's into the future? What's next for Berry Law? What's the next frontier?
I will tell you right now, we do two things now. We used to have more practice areas, but as of the time that this podcast airs, we do two things, personal injury, and then we do our veterans disability benefits nationwide. And, that include, we do mass torts as well. But the point is we're doing less. I mean, we've done, we've had 4 or 5 practice areas in the past. You start learning about, scaling and simplicity, right? And I think in order to, amplify the message, we have to simplify the message. And the problem is if you have too many practice areas, you're amplifying too many messages, you're confusing the consumer. And then just the other part is with as we start to get into AI, I think about this, right? Like if we're seen as 4 different firms, for instance, if you have what are you driving now, Michael?
Cybertruck.
Okay, Cybertruck, right? So if you get the Cybertruck fixed, generally you're going to want to take it to a Tesla repair shop, right? You're not going to take it to all electronic cars repair shop, right? So people who are looking to get their Cybertrucks repaired are looking specifically for Tesla repair shops, right? But the problem is if you repair Teslas, Porsches, Aston Martin, Ferraris, if you're doing all those, it's too much and it confuses the consumer and they don't think you're the expert. So we've really decided to niche further down, but it also helps with scaling, but also think about what's going to happen with AI and SEO in the future, right? If AI sees you as a bankruptcy firm because you did criminal defense and bankruptcy, but you don't want to, but 90% of your business is criminal defense, you're going to be seen as a bankruptcy firm and you're going to get a bunch of bankruptcy leads. If you want to cut that practice area, it's too late. So I think now is a really important time to get clarity on what you want your business to be, because AI search is growing and AI is, of course, feeding Google, feeding all the search engines with all the information that you're putting in. And so now is the time to get clarity. And if you have practice areas that are not performing, I wouldn't wait to cut them. And, I think one of the mistakes I've made throughout my career, whether it's been waiting too long to terminate someone or waiting too long to, end a practice area. I'm always quick to make a decision and do something to get something started. But where I have failed in the past is being cognizant enough of what's going around to say, this may not be our best option right now. And then really thinking through how much it's costing us to keep this practice area. Because when I started really digging into numbers, what I found out was you may have a practice area that is, on paper, is marginally profitable. And then you really start digging into how many calls you're getting, what's happening with those calls, how much you're paying, not just in marketing, but how much you're paying the sales team to answer the calls that you're not, and put into your CRM that you're not taking, and following up on the ones you're not going to take. It's like, wait a minute. For me, doing that analysis, I've been pretty lazy about that. It's always like, I'm excited to make the next decision, grow the next thing, but weeding the garden and really getting clarity on what is working for your firm, what is making your firm profitable, what your firm does really well. It's so important to assess that and reassess that over and over again and do it with fresh eyes. And that's one of the reasons why you as the CEO or the owner of the firm has to step back from time to time, because you can't, as they say, you can't read the label from inside the jar. But after taking some time off, I went to a meeting and I was like, for one of our practitioners, I was like, oh my gosh, we need to make these 5 changes. I never would have seen it had I kept going to those meetings week after week after week. So my biggest failure has been getting too deep into it that I don't see that, hey, this decision may no longer be a good decision. And as leaders, we have to be decisive. We have to make decisions. But it's okay to say, yes, I made this decision last month. I have better information now, and I have changed my position. And that's what smart people do. It's what leaders do. We don't just stick to one position. We evolve, we develop, and our insights and our opinions change based on the information that we're being fed. And we get new information every day.
It's like the saying that, strong opinions loosely held, right? That's like the ideal way to be. Like, meaning you may feel strongly about something, but if you get new information or new data that supports a different way of thinking, you change your mind. The worst way to be, I think, is strong opinions strongly held, because those are the people you're talking about that it doesn't matter what they see. I mean, if they believe the earth is flat, it doesn't matter what information you share with them, what data they see. You can put them in a spaceship and have them look from the outside. Their perspective doesn't change. And if that doesn't happen, there's no learning, there's no growing.
Yeah, and some of the best lessons I've learned have been from those violent disagreements where we're ready to throw hands over this. And like, this person's willing to fight me over this? And I'm like, oh shit, they might be right? If someone is really willing to get physical over this, I'm like, they really care. So then I'm like, whoa.
So okay, it's either that or they are so wrong that they can't bear the thought of it, right? So it could be either one.
Right. But that's why it's so worth exploring, okay? Because number one, if they are right and they've got this much passion and then they're a huge value to the organization. On the other hand, if they're wrong and they're dead wrong and the earth is flat and they're never going to change and they're going to fight you on it, fire them immediately.
Yes.
I can tell you that I have kept some of those people on the team because I love their passion. I love that they held their position. I love the contrarian position. But what I found was sometimes those people became the rust that were grinding our organization to a halt. So I love the conflict. I love, hey, they're gonna throw hands over something, and I'm like, I love this. I love it. Let's go. Let's dig in. And then it's like, okay. And then you realize like, oh my gosh, they really care because they do have a better answer. Or it's like, wait a minute. This has been their same position for the past 5 years. It's always been wrong. It always will be wrong. The earth is not flat. I don't need people on my team who are going to fight me over the earth being flat. Go to another organization where they believe the earth is flat.
Yeah, agreed. Well, John, as we come to a close, this being the Game Changing Attorney podcast, this is the second time I'm asking you this. The first time you told me it meant understanding the absolute rules and getting rid of everything else. So I'm going to ask you again, years later, what does being a game changer mean to you?
Being a game changer means changing yourself. If you want to change the game, you have to be able to change internally. We can't change mostly other people. Other people have to decide whether they're going to change, who they're going to become. But if we can change ourselves, decide who we are going to become, then we can change the game. But it starts internally saying, I want to change me, and then I can change the game.
I want to give a huge thank you to John for taking the time to join us on the Game Changing Attorney podcast. If you found this episode valuable, here are 3 free ways that I can help you grow your law firm. Number 1, download the first chapter of my book absolutely free at GameChangingAttorney.com. Number 2, you can shoot me a text at 404-531-7691 and I'll answer any question that you've got for me. And finally, number 3, if you can leave this podcast a 5-star review, it'll help us gain access to more influential thought leaders and bring their lessons learned here to you. For more information on our interview with John Barry, see the show notes for this episode in your podcast app or visit legalpodcast.com.